Okay, so welcome to Asher and Torah Anytime. We're up to Shmuel Bais and Shmuel Bais. I think this connects with the 222 thing. Like today, there's like 2222222. So this is 22 Shmuel Bais, Shmuel Bais. So we'll get up to Pasuk Bais, and we'll get up to the second word, and possibly we could have the second ois of the second word. Continue the chain. Right. Anyway. The last two prakim, the last Perek in Shmuel Aleph, the beginning of Shmuel Bais, was all about assisted suicide, and the eulogy that David HaMelech gave on Shaul and on Yonason. And again, despite the fact that Shaul was always harassing him and running after him, he still respected him and he mourned him. And now we begin Perek Bais. Vahi Achri Kain. It was after that Shaul was killed. And David still didn't know if at the time, he knew he was anointed, but he didn't know if the time for him to actually act as king has come. And he didn't know if he can return back to the land. Therefore, Vayishal David Bashem Leimod. He asks the Urim V'Tumim, which we spoke about many times, that he had the Urim V'Tumim because of the story of Novi Rekayanim. And he asks Hashem, Ha'ela, should I go up from Tziklog, which is the city that he got from Ochish, Ba'achas Ode Yehuda? Should I go, back into the enemy territory? Ba'achas Ode Yehuda, V'yemer Hashem Elav Alei. Go. V'yemer David, oh no Ela, to where should I go? V'yomer Chevron, go to Chevron. Go up to the city of Chevron. V'yal Shom. David HaMelech goes up to the city of Chevron. V'yalsem David, v'gam shtei nosha v'chinoya ma'Yisraelis v'Avigail eshes novel ha'karmeli. These are the two wives that we discussed already, that we know that he has. Soon we'll meet a few more. V'anosha v'asher imo yela David ishu beisoy. So he also takes up with him his entire entourage of 600 people that we spoke about at length. All of his derelicts. Vayeshvu ba'orei Chevron, and he settles them in Orei Chevron, in the hills around Chevron, the valley, the hills around Chevron. Because at this point he was sure that Hashem is with him, and he didn't need his 600 people anymore. He was like fearless. As long as he knew that he was the Mashiach Hashem, that God anointed him, and that he was the chosen one, he was secure that it's going to be okay. He didn't need his 600 guerrilla, whatever you want to call them. Vayavoyu Anshe Yehuda Vayimshechu Sham. So he goes to Anshe Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda. He comes from Yehuda. Vayimshechu Sham as David HaMelech on Beis Yehuda. So they anointed him that he should be king on Beis Yehuda. So that's not the entire nation of Israel, but it's a big portion of it, of Shevet Yehuda. So they accepted him as king. Vayagidu LeDavid Leimod Anshe Yovish Gilad. They told him about the Anshe Yovish Gilad, that Asher Kavru Ashol, that we learned in the last and two perakim ago, that they were Moisei Nefesh, and they went and they sacrificed. They went through much self-sacrifice to recover the crucified body of Shaul HaMelech, and they made a fire out of respect, and then they buried him and they mourned him, and they told him about it. Because the Plishtim humiliated the body of Shaul, and they hung him up on the wall, on the city wall, after they decapitated him in order to... they hung him up on the wall, they nailed him to the wall. So against the wall. So I don't know if it was crucified as on a cross, but against the wall. And they went and they were Moisei Nefesh to save him and give him Kever Yisrael and honor him. So David was different than all of the other kings who would go kill out all of their former enemies. He was trying to build bridges. He was trying to create a coalition that people should back him. Vayishlach David malachim el anshe Yovish Gilad. He sent emissaries, shlichim, to Gilad. Vayemer aleim beruchim atam l'Hashem asher asisam ha'chesed hazeh. Wow, you're blessed to Hashem that you did this chesed shel emes, that you're Moisei Nefesh to take Shaul and his children and bury them with honor. Im Adonechem im Shaul vatigberu oisoi, and that you bury them. Va'ato Yas Hashem imochem chesed ve'emes. Hashem should repay you and also do kindness with you. V'gam anochi esa itchem hatoy v'azois. because you did this tremendous honor to Shaul, which was his former quote-unquote enemy, I'm going to do chesed with you, and I'm going to protect you from all of your enemies. Asher asisam hadavar hazeh, because you did this mesiras nefesh. V'ata tachzakna yedechem, and now strengthen yourselves. V'yu levnei chayil, and you be warriors. Ki meisa v'nechem Shaul, because Shaul died, so I don't want you to lay back, and be complacent, You got to man up and be warriors. Ki meisa v'nechem Shaul, v'gam oisi ma'oshru v'ez Yehuda lemelech aleim. Here he's like doing a political move, and he's hinting to them, saying, by the way, I was also crowned as king on Beis Yehuda, and I'm also going to help you. So basically he's like alluding to them, he's being a ramaz that, by the way, I was also, so it might be beneficial for you if you join me, then we can work together. Avnei ben Ner was the former general of Shaul, and we spoke about him already in the past. He was loyal to Shaul, and Chazal said that he was a big tzaddik. Lokach es Ishboishes ben Shaul vayavineu machanoyim. He was still loyal to Shaul, and he didn't accept that David should be king. So he went and he took one of the children of Shaul that we never mentioned before, and he was called Ishboishes. He was Boishes. So he was, being that he was the general, he wanted that the heritage should continue on with the children of Shaul. So he took Boishes, even though the other 3 children were killed, he took him, and he made him that he should be king. Because he wanted to keep the legacy of Shaul alive. Vayamlicheyu el Gilad. So first he crowned him on Gilad, and then he took him around. El Ashuri, ve'el Yisrael, ve'al Ephraim, ve'al Benyamin, until Val Yisrael Kuloi. So strategically he took Boishes and he made him king one region after another until he got him to be the Melech al Bnei Yisrael, which are the other Shvatim. But again, it's like almost a repeat of, he's again a proxy king. He's again not the real. The real leader over here is Avnei. He's the guy who's behind the whole deal. And he's a proxy king which is being placed. So he doesn't have the charisma, the power, and the message that David has. As a side note, the Navi tells us, Ben Aboyim Shona Ishboishes, Ben Shaul B'mocha Yisrael. He was 40 years old. 2 years he had the Melucha. Ach Beis Yehuda achrei David. But the house of Yehuda was following David. So just like we said that Shaul was 2 years in the game, his Boishes was also 2 years in the game. So David is 6 years, is 7 years and 6 months. Now I wasn't clear how this exactly worked. If the 7 years started earlier and it was only 2 years, that means it was like the last 2 years of Boishes, and that he took over all of Yisrael, and that was the 2 years that corresponded with David, who David was 5 years before, or it means that after these 2 years, there was a reign of 7 years and 6 months, I'm not sure. So here's where the story begins, where Avnei ben Ner, who is the Shaul loyalist, goes out Givoino, and Yoav ben Tzeruya, he's running the army from David. Now Yoav ben Tzeruya is a sister from David HaMelech, so Yoav is David's nephew, so it's a family general. So they actually have today a picture of this Brechas Givon. This Brechas Givon, I just want to go on a side note, that whenever we talk about a Brecha, we're talking about a well, we envision a well like you have in the backyards, like you have, this like well on top of the ground with these 2 poles, like you have Rivka coming up in the well. In reality, in the ancient times, that's not the way a well looked like. The way a well looked like, you have to understand today, how do you dig wells? They come in and they have these drills which they connect one bit to the other until they get down like to 100, 200, 300 feet. But in the ancient world, there was no way how you dug 300 feet. There's no way how you dug a hole of a 24-inch diameter 300 feet deep. It's impossible. So the way how wells were dug was, and that's like why it's such a big deal, a well in the ancient world, you only had a shovel to dig with. A spade, a shovel, a spade and a shovel is not digging down 300 feet. So you have to dig a parameter of at least 40 or 50 feet in order that you should be able to continuously dig down and then take up all the dirt until you get maybe 5 or 10 feet down to the water level, and there you were able to dig that last hole that brought the water up. And eventually it comes up. That's how the water rises and the water comes up. Water in a regular well doesn't travel up 300 feet. But when you're having only a 5-10 foot, that's how the story of Rivka makes sense. So when it says like Mashal by Yitzchak, that Kala be'eretz shechavru avda Yitzchak's system and plishtim, and then Yitzchak his whole life is busy redigging wells and they're stuffing up the wells, and you're like, what's the big deal with the wells? No, a well was a big deal. It could have taken you 3 years to dig down until you were actually able to create a well with primitive tools.
It's a lifeline.
If you don't have water, but it's the work and it's the meaning of what a well meant. Anyway, they come against this well, this brecha. They have this brecha's given. Oh, besides for the fact that when you're digging down 200-300 feet, you also had to put concrete, cement. You have to cement the walls that it shouldn't cave in on you. Plus you have to have steps going down, and you have to understand that the animals are going down and they're coming back up. So this was a huge big deal, this whole well situation. Anyway, so they meet.
Technologies back in the day.
Relative.
Right.
So they're meeting. So what happens over here is that Yoav and Avner meet up by a well. Two different sides of a well. It's a big, round, huge place. So well, each one of them has like a little camp of soldiers. So it was an unexpected meeting of two enemies, but they wouldn't come to battle. They were just, by the way, by mistake, they meet. So vayesh ve'ela ala brecha mizeh ve'ela ala brecha mizeh. Just that you should understand, when you're talking about a tiny little well, it doesn't make any sense that.
Right, they weren't 5 feet apart.
They weren't 5 feet apart. They were 40 feet apart. You know, there was some sort of a distance. Vayemer Avner el Yoav. So Avner tells Yoav, "Yakumu no ana adam vayisachu. Let's play some military games. Let's do some military exercises together. You know, let's lifaneinu." Vayomer Yoav Yakumu. So Yoav, who's on the. So he said, fine. And the Medrash says that because Avner set up this game, and you'll see what happened, that's when in the end he himself got killed by the sword. Vayakumu, vayavru, b'mispar shnayim asal le'benyamin le'ish boishes ben shol, v'shnayim asal ma'avdei david. So they take 12 young soldiers from Avner, 12 young soldiers from Yoav, and they do this military type of a game. They're doing these exercises. They're going to play games like fencing, like a fencing type of a game where they're just doing it for sport.
It's like a military drill, but you have to do these parades. I mean, this is probably something, muscle stretching.
So let's listen to how it happens. So in the beginning, nobody had any intention to actually go to battle. But sometimes the play fights turn into a fight. So they grabbed on each other's head in order to start it. And that caused that the sword, they pulled each other, and the sword, vayiplu yachtov, killed each other. Bottom line is, some of the guys were pulled and they fell into the sword of the guy who was pulling them. And then they were also pulled back. Bottom line is, people started dying. It went out of control.
They were wrestling in full battle gear.
They were wrestling in full battle gear, and swords were where they weren't supposed to be. And they called this place where these chevre died, Chelkas Hatzurem, the portion of the swords. So anyway, they died.
These two were celebrating because they were officially opposite.
They were, but they didn't have an intention. They wanted to create. They weren't here to fight. There was no battle going on between them intentionally. Anyway, being that Chevra died, so now the play fight turned into a real fight. And being that it wasn't sure who won and what happened, so they started the battle. So Avner and Anshe Yisrael, which is the Shol Chevra, who are the Ish Boishes, who are Shaul's son, they got beaten l'fnei Avdei David. So there was 3 brothers from the Bnei Tzeruya, which we spoke about, were the daughter of Yishai. So these are 3 nephews of David. There was Yoav, who's the general, Avishai, and Ashoel. And Ashoel, he runs really fast. He runs like a gazelle. He was able to run like a gazelle, really, really fast. And it seems like he decided that he's going to even out the score, and he's going to kill Avner. Now, if he kills Avner, so then he beat down.
The game is over.
Then he beats down Shaul's people. He beats down. The game's over. Vayirdoif Ashoel achrei Avner. He's running after Avner in order to kill him, because he is the main guy. And if he would do that, he would give David over the whole reign automatically. He would basically, David would automatically take over, because Boishes had no power over the people. He was a proxy king of sorts. He was going for a beeline. He's going straight after him. So Avner spins around, and Avner tells him, "Are you a Shoel?" Avner tells Ashoel, he says, "Don't run after me, and don't action sich to fight after me. Look, I understand that you want to go back because, you don't want to be a loser, that you're coming back empty-handed. So netei lecha al yemincha al smoilcha ve'echos lecha echad man ha'adam v'kach lecha schalitzasei." Go grab one of my guys and take his jacket. You'll come home and you'll make believe that you got a jacket. You won't have to come home like a loser, but don't run after me. Like what are you trying to do? Like, let's go. Like, what are you trying to do? So Ashoel doesn't back down. He keeps on going for a beeline after Avner. Now Avner didn't want to kill the Ashoel. Vayosef oid Avner loimer el Ashoel. So Avner tells Ashoel, "Sur lecho macharoi, get out of here. Lama keko, why should I knock you? Lama keko arza, why should I kill you? Ve'ich esa panai al Yoav achicha. What am I going to answer to your brother Yoav, the opposing general? What am I going to answer? That I killed you? I don't want to kill you. I'm not here to kill you." Vayemo'ein lasur, and Ashoel didn't want to back down, and he didn't want to get the kind way out. So he saw that he's coming after him to kill him, and obviously Avner was a general, so he was much more fit for battle than Ashoel. Vayakeu Avner ba'achrei achanis. He took the bottom of a spear, and el achoimesh on the 5th rib, which is against a fatal place to strike somebody. That's where the liver is. Vateitze achanis ma'achrov. And he pierced it through him until the other side. Vayipal shom vayomos tachtov. And he fell there and he died. Vayikol haba el hamokom el shenachal shom Ashoel. Anybody who came to this place where Ashoel fell, vayomos, where he died, vayamoidu. They stood there in a moment of silence. It was a big tragedy. Now, Chazal, the Gemara is busy with this. Halachically, this was like, l'choyre, he was a roidef. L'choyre, Ashoel is a roidef. He's running after Avner to kill him. So if he's a roidef, so then Avner had a right, he's a roidef, and he had a right to defend himself. But Yoav, but the other kids, Yirdefu Yoav Avishai Achrei Avner, but Yoav and Avishai are chasing after Avner. Why were they chasing after Avner? L'choyre, he was right. So the Gemara has a whole debate that Yoav and Avishai, they held that he didn't have to kill him. He didn't have to kill him. He could have knocked him out like a limb, or he could have got him in a foot, or got him in somewhere where he could have wounded him, but he didn't have to actually kill him. If that's the case, that he had an opportunity. He had an opportunity not to kill him and just to maim him. So then he's a Ritzeach, and then they become the Goyal Adam. And being that they're the Goyal Adam, they want to avenge his blood. So they're running after him to avenge his blood because they believe that he didn't have to kill him. So the Gemara has a whole debate back and forth on the whole question of Goyal Adam and what's considered when there's a roidef. I know today, for example, I think in cops, when they train cops, there's no such a thing where a cop takes you out on a leg. When they shoot to kill. There's no this concept of shooting somebody in a limb in order to stop him from killing you doesn't exist in our world today, but akaponim in the Gemara it does. Vayidufu Yoav Avishai achri Avner v'Hashemesh bo v'hem bo ad give us ammo. They come to give us ammo. Asher al pnei Giach, which is the name of a place. Derech midbar Givoin. Eskaptzu v'nei Binyamin. When they saw that they're being chased, that b'nei Binyamin achri Avner vayu lagudo echos, that they're going to battle with Yoav and Avishai vayamdu al rosh giva echos. So now it's becoming a real battle. Now it's like, they're gathering more and more people, and it's getting really, really serious. Vayikra Avner. Avner calls out to Yoav. Now Avner definitely had a justification over here for killing a shoel. It wasn't Stam that he killed a shoel. He told a shoel, don't chase after me. And Avner calls out to Yoav, Vayomer halonetzach toichal cherev. Are you always going to look to kill each other? That we should be on each other's throats. You know that in the end, you could have known in the end that it's going to be bitter. And what happened now is going to happen in the end. Either I'm going to die or you're going to die. And nobody is going to gain anything besides having more blood spilled. Don't forget that this whole story started with a stupid play fight. This was like a really bad story that nobody intended and just spiraled out of control. So why are we continuing this?
A lot of black, there's a lot of fight going on.
Sure.
Just died.
Half of Nach is about, Va'ad masai lo yisoymar la'om lashuv ma'achri achechem. Till when are you aren't you going to tell the people to stop it? So basically he's saying, let's stop this now. Let's stop this now before it gets worse. Because a fight started doesn't mean that we both have to continue fighting now forever. Let's stop it. Vayomer Yoav, and Yoav tells Avner in a lashon of Shvuah, he swears, Chai Olekim, Ki lule dibarta, if you wouldn't have spoken, and if you wouldn't have started this whole fight with saying Yukumu no hana adam v'yasachvu lefanenu, ki az me'aboyke na'ala om ish ma'achrei Yachav. Then we would have went on our way. This whole story wouldn't have started to begin with. Bottom line is he agreed. Bottom line is he's saying, look, you started this because you said let the Chevra come play. Basically, Avner is at fault for starting the play fight. He's saying if you wouldn't have started this play fight, we wouldn't have gotten here. But I agree with you, let's not continue this battle. Vayiska Yoav v'shoifer, he blows the horn, that's the sign of how battles begin and how battles end. Vayamdu kol ha'am v'lo yidifu oid achri Yisrael v'lo yosfu oid lilochem, they stopped the fight. But, and we're going to see later on the story, Yoav still kept a grudge on Avner for killing a shoel. This is very important later on in the game because he still believed that he is the Goyal Adam who's going to avenge his brother's blood, even though Avner had real good justification in self-defense for killing a shoel. So now we go on to the next part. They were afraid, so they just kept on going the whole night. Another place, they come to Machanoim, and Yoav stopped going after Avner. He retreats, he goes back to see who's missing from his people. 19 people were killed from David's camp. And this Ashoel who's David's nephew. It's just very ironic that Chazal is like the general of Shaul is a big tzaddik and this, and the general from David. David hikum ibn Yaman uva anshe Avner 360 ish mesu. So the Avnei David, they hit from Binyamin. Uba Avnei Avner, Shlosh Mez v'Shishim Ishmesu. So that's 360 people. So they lost 19 or 20 with Ashoel. Because Chazal said that Ashoel was Nimna Keneged Kulam. He was so important. He was a nephew of David and he was in a very high-ranking position that he was Shakol Keneged Kulam. But anyway, 20 and there was 360. So obviously it wasn't a balanced fight. So Yehuda came out with a much bigger win, let's say, even though they lost Ashoel. Vayisu es Ashoel, they took Ashoel vayigbiru bekever Aviv asher beis Lechem vayechlu kol halayla Yoav anoshav. They're going back all night vayoy lehem bechevron until it becomes light break in Chevron, and they arrive back in Chevron. Now we're up to Perek Gimel. The battle was very long. The conflict is growing with David. David's camp is getting stronger and stronger, and Shaul's camp is getting weaker and weaker because many people were defecting from Shaul's camp and going to David. First he has a Bechoir Amnon, who's born to Achinoam HaYizraelis. In Mishneu, and the second one is Kilov. He was born to Avigail, which was Eishes Novel HaKarmeli. So, this is like a similar, that he looked exactly like David. V'hashlishi is Avshalom ben Macho, who was Bas Talmi Melech Geshur. So here I found out something I never knew, could be you did, that Avshalom, when everybody knows that Avshalom was killed with there, and David mourned him, and he wanted to rebel. But I never knew that Avshalom ben Macho Bas Talmi Melech Geshur was a Eishes Yefas Toyar. That when Chazal say that you're allowed that if you go to battle and you find the Eishes Yefas Toyar, this pretty woman, you could take her. But then Chazal say right afterwards the story of a Ben Sarir murdered, and Chazal say that if you're going to take a Eishes Yefas Toyar, you're going to end up with a Ben Sarir murdered. And David HaMelech took this Eishes Yefas Toyar, and his son of Shalom was this live consequence, who was this Ben Sarir murdered. I never knew that. V'harevi Adonio ben Chagis. Fifth son is Adonio. V'chamishi is Shvatya ben Avito. And then the sixth one is Vashishi Yisrom leEglo, which is Michal Bashol. And we're going to come back soon to the Michal story. Don't forget that Michal was Shaul's daughter, who Shaul took away from David when he decided to murder Machzan and gave her to Palti ben Lish. And you're going to see later how he gets her back. But bottom line is, this Yisrael is really an Einikel, is a grandchild from Shaul, who was born to David through Michal. Eishes David. Vashishi Yisrael leEgla Eishes David. She's the only one that's called Eishes David, because he's the Egla's. It's called the Egla because it was Moedik Chaviv on David, and it was called Eishes David because she was the Bas Melech. Ela Yuldu leDavid b'Chevron. So these were the children that were born to David in Chevron. Anyway, come along on the story, my friends. Vahi biyois ha-milchama ben Beis Shaul u'ben Beis David v'Avner hoyu mischazek b'Beis Shaul. So Avner is really trying to build up Boish's melucha, to keep the heritage alive and to keep Shaul's legacy alive. U'l'Shaul pelegesh. Now Shaul had a pelegesh. Shaul had a concubine. Back in the times of Chazal, you were able to have a wife, and you were also able to have a concubine, which was a isha l'lo ksuba. It was a woman that didn't have ksuba. A regular wife had a ksuba. And the ksuba meant that you had to provide certain things, and if you divorced her, and if you didn't, there's requirements. But a pelegesh is a woman who you marry without a ksuba. Ushma Ritzpa bas Aya, vayomer. Her name was Ritzpa bas Aya. Vayomer. Now this Boishes, not only wasn't he capable of being a king, but he just didn't have he just didn't have the seichel, he just didn't have the, he didn't even get how to play with his most important people. Vayomer el Avner, madua bos al pelegesh avi. Why did you fool around with the pelegesh of my father? Now, obviously his father's not alive, but it's still a pe'alacha, you're not allowed to marry your father's wife or his pelegesh. So, he's like, theoretically, I don't know why Avner is not allowed to marry Pelegesh Avi.
Who's telling Avner
this? This Boishes. Oh, because al Pe'alach you're not allowed to marry Almon of a king. Oh, that's the reason.
I heard of him also. It's his father's legacy.
It's his father's thing.
Yep.
So the cheshbon over here is that why Taka did Avner do it? Because really he was the Malchus. That means Boishes is really a proxy king. Avner is really the guy. So Avner held, right, Boishes is the puppet. Avner is the real guy behind the scenes running the game. So he felt that he is allowed to marry her. And Lemaisa, that's why he did it. Bottom line is it bothers Boishes. Because Boishes says, look, if I'm the king, then you're being murdered b'malchus. If you're basically saying that I'm not the king. So you're saying I am the king, I'm not the king. So what am I? What am I, your dog? What, the head dog? What am I, the head dog for Yehuda? Like Yehuda is like a disgrace, and I'm like the head dog. I'm like the head of the dogs from Beis Yehuda, from your enemy that you mavazami. Hayoim esa chesed and Beis Shol avicha el echav. From now, I am going to. It's not worthy for me that I should do kindness to Beis Shol avicha or el echav or to your brothers. I'm out. Ve'el mereu or to his friends. V'lohim tzisicha b'yad David. I didn't go b'yad David. And the fact that you have to be maketova, and instead you're just being what's the opposite of a maketov?
Ungrateful.
You're ungrateful. You're coffee toiv. That tifkoid alai avoino isha yoim, and you're putting on me the sin. And he says, and he swears, and he says, "Ko yaser likim leAvner, so should God do to Avner, v'ko Yosef loi." If I am not going to go over to the Malchus of David, I'm defecting. Ki kasher nishba Hashem leDavid, just like God swore to David to be mamlechim on the Jews. Ki keina yaser loi, I am going to go help him. Bottom line is, he tells the king or the proxy king that he's out. I'm out. I'm defecting to David. Now you have to understand, this is huge. This is huge. This is the biggest thing that could happen, that Avner, who is the whole guy, is going over to David. This is basically that David wins the whole game now.
How old is David around this time?
How old? He says, you'll see, it goes back and forth the psukim, because you see that he didn't have Michal yet. He got him back later, and you're going to see soon that he says that he's very young. So I'm not sure. I am going to give over the kingdom from Beis Shaul, going to give it over to David, and he's going to rule from Dan till Beersheba. He's taken over the whole game. And Boishes had nothing to answer. He was like dumbstruck. First of all, he was afraid of him. He was a powerful guy. It's a more limit this. It's a more limit that.
Did he actually own territory like proxy king? It's sort of like when you take the
Avner, in the beginning of the Perek, we said that Avner got. He made him proxy king over one region, over the other region, but Avner was the one who did the work.
Republics over the years, like where it was like a military coup, and then the military
installs a puppet king. So basically, Boishes was a puppet king, was a proxy puppet king, whatever you want to call him.
When
now,
he leaves, does he take old people just with him?
yeah, Avner, you're going to see. Avner was ready to give over. Avner was ready to consolidate the entire Melucha and recognize that David is the guy. Basically, he realized Avnei realized that Boishes is not a solution. That Boishes doesn't help the game. It's like, it's the same thing that happened with Shaul. It's like, look, I'm helping you, okay? Now you shut up and you work along. If you're coming to Brecha and complain, then I'm not with you. Now Boishes is also in a predicament, but Boishes could have been theoretically right by confronting Avner about the story with the Peleges, but he didn't have the seichel. You have to know when to confront the person and how to confront the person, and you have to know who's in power and who's not. You have to get the whole game. I'm not saying that there isn't ways how to get to somebody, but you have to know how to do it strategically, without shooting yourself in the foot. So that's why he never had the power of running the Melucha, because he didn't have that skill set. Which really comes back from Shaul, which the whole story of Shaul was that Shmuel appointed him to be a king, and he was supposed to listen to Shaul. Anyway, he gets really upset at Boishes, and right away, Vayishlach Avner Malachim al David Tachtav Leimoy Lemi Aretz. Lemi Aretz Leimoy Korso Brischo Iti. To who is the land? Which means Lashem Aretzim Loyoy Korso Brischo Iti. To be my friend. V'hinei Yodi Imach Li'aseh Ve'lecha Eskol Yisrael. I'm ready to join you, and I'm ready to obligate myself that my hand is going to be with you to join Kol Yisrael from the Beis Shaul and bring him over to you. Vayomer Tov, David HaMelech says, good. Ani echres itcho bris, I'm going to make with you this pact. Ach, davar echad anochi shol me'itcho leimer. One thing I ask of you, lo yisire es ponai, ki im lifnei, heviacho es Michal bashol, bevoyacho lirois es ponai. So here David cashes in on the old story where his beloved wife Michal, who lowered him down from the window to save his life. Michal was his loyal wife, who Shaul decided he's taking away. And he said, I want her back. Vayishlach David malacham el ish Boishes ben Shaul. So David sends messengers to Boishes ben Shaul to be mechabet him, because he didn't want to take it without the reshus. Again, David was always very careful not to chepa, not to bother whoever was in power. So he sends now an official emissary to Boishes, even though Avner is leaving him now. Leimer to noes ishti as Michal asher eirasti li b'mea orles plishtim. Give me back my wife Michal, which is his sister, or half-sister. We don't know. Asher eirasti li b'mea orles plishtim, which I was mekadosh with 100 foreskins of the plishtim. Now, if you remember the story, there is two parts to the story, and Chazal are busy with this, because on the one hand, Shaul, he said, whoever is going to kill Goliath is going to get my daughter Michal. And he did that. Afterwards, he killed 100 Plishtim, and he brought the foreskins of the Plishtim. So really, this is, in the Gemara, it's a very big issue, this. How was David allowed to take away Michal from Palti ben Lish? So really the question is, it's a debate. Really the question is, before we go into the story of Chazal about Palti ben Lish, let's just understand the dynamic, the halachic dynamic of sorts, what was going on over here. What was Shaul's cheshbon that he took away? So it's like this: when you're mekadosh somebody to be moichel lechoiv, he was a choiv. Shaul HaMelech said that he's going to give one daughter. He was moichel lechoiv. When you're mekadosh isha with being moichel lechoiv, mekadosh b'milva, then it's not, the kedushin doesn't work. Based on that assumption, then the kedushin, then he was able to give it to Palti ben Lish. What David was arguing was that I was mekadosher fair and square with the 100 arlus of the plishtim. So that was his argument why the kedushin was chal, and there's no way out of it. Regardless of how you see it, the Chazal said that Palti ben Lish was a tzaddik, and that when Shaul gave it to Palti ben Lish, he never had any relations with her, and he drove his sword in the bed. Then he said, "Yidakar b'cherev misha, whoever should be, whoever does ma'aseh should get killed by a sword." And the bottom line is, he never had relations. So he was a great tzaddik, but he was also in love with Michal. He loved her as his wife, but he never did anything that was asur. Bottom line is, he says, so David HaMelech says, "Now give me back my wife," and he's pointing out, Asher erasti li b'mea arles plishtim. So you can't say that the Kedushin wasn't chal. It was chal because I paid fair and square and I was mekadosh with something which was worth more than a shava pruta. Regardless, vayishlach is boishes v'yikachel me'im ish. So they take her away from Palti ben Lish, me'im Paltil ben Loyish. And Chazal say that it was called Paltil ben Loyish because Paltu keil mo aveda v'loy boel Michal. Ve'al Shem shenes gaber ka'ari v'loy nogabo. He never touched her. Palti keil means God saved him. God rescued him from the aveda. Vayelech ito isha. It's mamish like a heartbreaking story. Vayelech ito isha. Her husband Paltil walked together with her. And he cried after her. So again, Chazal say, Pashup Pshat is that he cried because they were taking away his wife from him. And he did nothing wrong. He was a tzaddik. Chazal say that there was another deeper meaning in the tears is that he had a spiritual experience, a spiritual connection to Hashem from constantly having this spear stuck in the bed and always being misgaber. That means he was in a constant tension. He was always having this like sexual tension going on that he was misgaber on consistently, and that gave him a tremendous connection to Hashem. And he was crying that now he was going to lose that connection, that dveikus that he had from this constant, his gaberus on this tension. It's kaval. And where did they take him to? Ad Bachurim. I don't know, this is my own Torah that I was just tripping on when I was learning this. Ad Bachurim. They took him to a place called Bachurim, which means Bachurim, means a Bachur, Ad Bachurim. They took him to the place of Ad Bachurim. This is basically the world of a Bachur. The world of a Bachur is the world of, in one way or another, it's the world of having to be misgaber on innate tensions that you have to somehow elevate to Hashem. Anyway, they took him to Ad Bachurim.
Turn into like a non-important person, is that right?
No, they brought him, he cried until he came Ad Bachurim. What? It's a physical place. It's a physical place, yeah. I just was tripping on it that it means also Bachurim, that comes from the word Bachur. Vayomer El of Avner, so Avner tells Paltiel, when they reach that place of Bachurim, when they come to the place of Bachurim, he says, Leich Shuv, go back to your place. Vayashav, and he returned. Anyway, Udvad Avner, so come along on this gewaldige, terrible story that's happening next. So Michal is on the way back to David. Udvad Avner hoyim ziknei Yisrael leimoid. And Avner tells the ziknei Yisrael leimoid, gam tumol gam shilsham yisem avakshim as David the melech aleichem. You were always looking to have David. I was the one who stopped you because I was backing Shaul. Ve'ata now, being that the daughter of Shaul is coming back to the king, to David, being that I'm bringing Michal back to her rightful husband, back to David, so now the Malucha is transferring over back to David. So basically, he had a political agenda now. He got it that he's done with Boishes. So this request that David asked, he used it as a marketing pitch to get the people to follow through on his shvur that he made, that he's going to unite the kingdom by telling everybody the Melucha is now transferring over to David. V'haraya, proof in the pudding, I'm bringing Michal, which was his original hand, I'm bringing her back. And therefore, Asu, do what you initially intended. Ki Hashem Amar al David Leimer biyad David Avdi Yishia es Am Yisrael miyad Plishtim and miyad Kol Eveichem, because God said through the nevuah of Shmuel Hanavi that David is going to save the Jewish people from the Plishtim and from all their enemies. Vaydaber gam Avner be'oznei Binyamin.
If Avner knew that this is what Hashem said, what's the Havner?
Oh, so Chazal talk about it. He darshan the pasuk. The Gemara talks about that. He darshan the pasuk that he had like that. There's going to be two kings until a certain point. He had a drush and a pasuk. I don't remember what it is. He darshan the certain pasuk that was mashma that it's possible to be two kings at once. I'll look it up later. That's a good question. Vaydaber gam Avner be'oznei Binyamin. So Avner goes now to Shevet Binyamin, which is also from the Shevet of Ishboishes. It's also from Shaul's Chaver, and he tells them, "Hello, let's go." Vayelech gam Avner ledaber aznei David bechevron es kol asher toiv be'enei Yisrael ve'enei kol beis Binyamin. And he goes over to David and he says, "Look, I have a huge amount of people ready to come along, and we can consolidate this." Vayavai Avner al David Chevron v'itoi esrim anoshim. So Avner came to David with a small group of a delegation of 20 guys. Vayaz David la'Avner v'anoshim ashita mishter. David makes a feast, peace feast. Vayomer Avner al David, Akuma v'elcha v'agbetza al Adoni HaMelech, es kol Yisrael v'yichrisu itcha bris. I want to go gather the people. I'll make with you a pact. So he sends Avner now to go and bring him everybody. So Avner and David are now good. Now listen to this tragedy. Yoav, who's the general, the nephew, comes back from fighting with the Plishtim, the Sholol, the Ravim, they're bringing a huge amount of loot. And Avner wasn't there because Avner was sent to bring back the people. Yoav and the Chevra come, and they bring a huge amount of loot, and therefore they felt very entitled. They felt like, yeah, we're good. They just had a battle. They bring back tons of loot. They're feeling like pumped. Yoav hears that Avnei ben Ner came to the king, to David, and he sent him with peace to work along. Yoav comes to David and he says, "What did you do? How could you have done such a thing? He came to make with you a pact, and you sent him back. What are you, nuts? Your daughter's Avnei ben Ner. We know this Avnei ben Ner. He's your enemy. He came to fool you. He came to gather intelligence. He came to find out who you are, what you are, what's going on. To know everything that you're doing. You were fooled. He was coming here with a ploy in order to bring back information, in order to gather us from Boshas." So he sends out emissaries to call Avner back to the king, because maybe he forgot something to talk to him. He comes to a place where they found him. David didn't know. It wasn't with his permission. He didn't know what they were doing. Bottom line is, he went without his permission. Vayoshev Avner Chevron vayateu Yoav. So Avner goes to Chevron, and Yoav takes him off the main road, El Toich HaShar, into the gateway, the Dabarita Basheli, to talk to him B'Shalom. And now was his chance to take revenge on his brother Eshoel and be the Goyal Adam. So he told David that how could you have trusted him, he's out to get you. But that wasn't his real intention. He just wanted to get his hands on Yoav to avenge the blood of Eshoel. And he hit him on the 5th rib, exact same place where Avner killed Eshoel when he was after him. Vayomas badam asoy el echav. El Toich HaShar, he brought, bottom line is, he used halachic, he went to the Shars with the Sanhedrin would say. Bottom line is, he killed him with the intention that he's a Goyal Adam for killing a Shoel. And this was huge tragedy, like next level mess up. Vayishma David ma'achrekein, and David hears of the story, and he was devastated, because he was devastated on multiple amount of levels. First of all, it's not so sure that he had a right to kill him, also Goyal Adam. So that's one thing, but you killed his biggest ally. You killed the man who was able to bring everything together. Not only that, you also killed the opportunity that people should trust, that they should want to come over to our side, because they're afraid that we're going to take revenge. And here the proof is that when you defect and you come, David's people are going to kill you, and you just killed it, that we should ever be able to unite it. Vayishma David Mar again. Vayomer Noki Onoichi. I am clean from this. Umamlachti mim Hashem ad olam midmei Avner ben Ner. I think there's the cave of Avner ben Ner is somewhere in Hebron. You could, I don't know where, it's somewhere. There's a cave where people go to. Yachulu, and David cursed Yoav. Now I always have this trip on curses. First of all, David curses like a boss. You have no idea. Throughout Nach, David curses like an Italian. I mean, mamish. And I just have this always this let's finish the curses and I'll come back. Yachulu al Rosh Yoav should be fall on the head of Yoav, al kol beis aviv, and whoever supports him, and on his father's house. Va'al yikareis mi beis Yoav zav u'mutzoira. He should have a zav and leprosy, and umachzik ba'pelech, people who are on crutches, people who should be cripples, v'noifel b'cherev, and people who are going to die by the sword, v'chasar lechem, and they shouldn't have any bread. Curses them out. I always have this trip on a trip. If you go into the story, what's really going on? There's really a story within a story over here. David HaMelech has a big plan. He has a big plan to unite all of Klal Yisrael under one kingdom and bring peace and tranquility and unite the people. This Yoav, he has a small story. His small story is that he's going to take revenge on his brother, which between me and you is not so clear that it's avengable. Yoav sees the small story, David sees the big story. So, people who for their small agendas or for their petty me against you, let's get even, ruin the big picture, these are the people who live a cursed life. If you want to know who gets to live the life of the Zav and the Metzoida and the Machzik Ba'Pelech and Noichel Ba'Cherev V'Chasar Lochem, it's the people who can't see the big picture and are out to defend their own petty little rights. The people who cut off their nose to spite their face, those are the people. So it's not like he's cursing you separate curses. He's describing this. You're the type of person who the consequences of these actions is this, because you just brought this on Klal Yisrael. You just single-handedly. Now come along on a Gaval trip here. So you have an Avishai, another brother, killed him, right? Now, listen to the difference between how David deals with issues and how Boishas deals with issues. Okay? David al Yoav el kol ha'am asher itoi kiru v'gdeichem v'chigru sakem v'siftu l'fnei Avner. Everyone should mourn publicly. He makes a huge levaya. V'hamelech David hoilech achri amita, and David himself goes after the meat of Avner. He's saving whatever situation is left to save. And I once heard a Gavaldig story. There was in Ger, there was a huge mashpia. His name was Reb Godel. Reb Godel Eisner. Gavaldig holy Yid in Ger. A big commandant, mashpia, whatever you want to call him. He died probably in the 1980s, but he was a Mu'id the kid. He was in concentration camps, a Polish Yid. I remember one of the stories I saw there, and the story, the Sefer called Mchitzas Reb Godel. He says that there was this guy who his factory burnt down. Factory burnt down. I have to understand, once upon a time in Poland, when your factory burnt down, there was no insurance, and you could have been a huge businessman, you were done. You were done. And this guy was standing there crying. And he was like despondent, and he was miyuyish, and he was done. And this Chassidish Yid came over to him, and he said, "Don't go away now." He said, "Zeitze verdienen in the hand to getog. Zeitze verdienen in the hand to getog. See to, how do you say zeitze verdienen in the hand to getog? See to earn today for today." That means there's stuff left in your warehouse, even though it burnt. There's enough schoira left in your destroyed warehouse that you should be able to sell it to make money for tomorrow, for today. Cover today. Tomorrow we'll deal with tomorrow, but don't, because the big picture got destroyed, don't forget the little things. It's the opposite. Don't lose out on the little details now. Go, verdien the hand to getug. David said this is a huge tragedy. This is the end of the world. His dream of uniting the whole Klal Yisrael crashed now. It's over. Do damage control. See what you can do. So he made a hesped. He himself goes after the mita. Vayikbru es Avnei bechevron. Vayisa melech es koile vayev. He cried. El kever Avnei vayivku gal la'am, and everybody cried along. And he made a hesped on him. Ve'akoinen hamelech el Avnei, who's the enemy general defected. He cries in him. Vayomer akemois naval. How can it be?
Is David playing the small picture now?
David.
Is he still stuck with the big picture?
No, he has a big picture.
Right.
He wants to unite. His big picture was taken away from him.
Right.
He's trying to salvage whatever he could. On the one hand, to salvage whatever he could, that he won't be able to unite everybody now because he doesn't have Avner. But at least the problem where the people will be afraid to defect to him, that should be resolved. People should know it didn't come from him. He doesn't go into a shell and lock himself up.
He was able to do both.
Both. And it goes more, and you'll see more details soon. Could it be that Avner died like a Rasha, that he died by the sword? How could it be that such a tragedy befell him? Your hands weren't tied. He was Meshabech, the Tchuna of Avner. He shouldn't have died the way he died. And your feet weren't chained. You fell like b'fnei avla. People fooled you into dying. You were set up in order to be killed. You felt that way, and everybody cried along with him. Now the effect of this was, as David Lechem, he sat shiva on him. They brought him bread like for Ovel. So this Havirah, Ba'od Hayoim, Vayishav David Leimer, Koyas Eli Elikim, V'chol Yosef, Ki Yim Lefnei Boy HaShemesh Etam Lechem HaKomum. He swore that he's not going to eat anything. God should do to me what he did to Avner if I'm going to eat. So he made like a public fast, that he's fasting on a Nafal Sar B'Yisrael, a great person fell in Klal Yisrael, and he made a huge big deal. So on the one hand, it's a huge big deal. But there's also a political idea over here, is that he's giving the message that he doesn't support killing people who defect. Nobody should think that it came from him. And everybody recognized that David didn't know what was going on.
It's also a Shmuel Bais.
Yeah. 1 second. Where are we up there? What?
Maybe that's true.
Well, let me finish. I'm not done yet. 1 second. Wait. We still have a few more psukim. Everybody knew that the king wasn't the one behind it. Oh, here's another point I want to bring up. Really good point. This is a very common phrase that we use today. That a great Sar, a great Talmud Chacham, a great giant, a Torah giant, died. And everybody should be misabel. And if you're going to ask the question, here's where I was gewalt. If you ask the question, why didn't he kill Yoav Avishai? Why didn't he kill Yoav Avishai? Just the opposite of Yovash. Yovash didn't chap that if Avner is your general, you can't go attack him now with this Pelegish story, you're just going to lose. David HaMelech was smart enough, he did the political move to save what he could, but he also recognized that Yoav is very powerful. So he's not going to fight with his general. He'll deal with him. He said, I'm very young. I'm young. And I was anointed to be king. My generals, my nephews are stronger than me. God is going to take care of the people who did evil. So he plays smart. He chaps the game that tragedy befalls, save the day. Don't do stupid moves now, because if people are more powerful than you, they'll bring you down. Sometimes you got to live with people you don't like and deal with it. L'chaim.